Great care.
Hello, and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers with whatever writing ailments you might have.
Whether it's related to your craft or your career, we can help.
Are you ready for your session?
The doctors are in. Roshni.
Hey, Tom.
Have you ever been to one of those murder mystery dinners?
I actually have. It was really bizarre, and it didn't quite go off the way it was supposed to. But I think in theory it was fun.
Well, today we have the creators of a whodunit movie with us, a movie called Who Dunt Dunt DUNNit, the movie, a very funny, tongue-in-cheek, super meta take on the genre. And we have writer-director Thomas Tulak and sound mixer-composer, and also our good friend Adam Pineless here. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah. I'm really excited to talk to you about this because I read you guys are posting online that you won a couple awards already for Who Dunt Dunt DUNNit. It won the Best Narrative Film and Best Ensemble Cast at the Indie Eye Film Awards. Congratulations.
That's correct. Yes, thank you so much.
You.
So yeah, it's always great when somebody we've known Adam for years, and we see something they're working on, and they're getting recognized for their great work. It's always great to have them on the show. And Thomas, you're new to the show, so welcome.
Mm-hmm.
First, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. You actually started as a child star. That's kind of like the first Hollywood career you had, and then you skipped a while, and then you started writing and producing. But just so everyone knows, you were one of the Lost Boys in Hook, Spielberg's Hook, right?
That is correct. Yes, I was the youngest one. I was actually the one that I spit out the candle and yelled "Good night, Neverland."
There you go. So get that out of the way. If you want to talk about it, you can. But we want to talk about your current stuff, so we just want to get that out of the way. But you did start your career in Hollywood very young, and is that what drove you to want to become a filmmaker later?
Yeah, you could say that. I started young because I had that drive to, at that age, to get in and start acting. But it was while I was on set of Hook, working with, Steven Spielberg, Robin Williams, who I didn't know at the time, but came to know while I was on set. It was while working with them that I kind of decided, even at that age, 6 and 7 years old, that I was going to dedicate my life to telling stories, making movies, and making people laugh.
I mean, yeah, at that age, what kid knows the director of any movie, right?
For sure, yeah.
I don't know many kids that age are like, oh, I think the cinematography was excellent,
Yeah, for sure. I had no idea, who I was working with, or I came to learn in the years after why everyone kept making such a big deal about what I was doing. But at the time, I was just, having fun.
So then years go by, you are a grown adult and you're an actor and a writer and a producer. And then you came up with the idea for a super in whodunit genre film. And can you talk about how that came around and then how you and Adam started to work on it together?
Yeah, sure. So it was, let's see, 2000, it was 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And so I have younger siblings who are, there's a 17-year age gap between myself and them. And so I was over at my father's house, and I was showing my younger siblings one of my all-time favorite movies, which was Clue. They had never seen it. So watching it with them for the first time, which is always a joy, watching your favorite movie with someone who's never seen it before, especially when they're siblings and you can, get them into it as well. So I'm driving home after the movie, and I'm driving out of my father's neighborhood, which is it's a middle class suburban neighborhood, and I start thinking about Clue and the murder mystery genre at all, and I start thinking, how funny would it be if we took what is the stereotypical dinner party murder mystery and we took it out of that world and put it in this world. You know, instead of a big 18-bedroom mansion in the middle of nowhere, it's a regular 3-bedroom house in a middle class suburban neighborhood. And instead of, it taking place in the past where no one has, a phone or anything, and it's in present day and everyone has a phone, but there's always a reason they can't use their phones to call for help. And even though the neighbor's right next door, there's always a reason they can't just go to the neighbor and ask for help. And so that idea of taking this very genre specific trope and then flipping it around on its head and making fun of it like that, that was the initial spark that I just could not get out of my head. I thought at the time, this is could be has potential to be really, really funny, right? Because that brings this world into a world that more people are familiar with. And so that was the initial spark to it. And then I went and made a short film proof of concept version of it that played in some festivals and won some awards. And it was always the intent to take that and turn it into a feature. And so, how I hooked up with Adam, it was around that time where I got cast in a short film called The Recipe, which was a comedy film about two warring mafia families that were fighting over a secret cannoli recipe. And I was an actor on that film, and Adam was, I believe, Adam, you were
I was the art
set
director on that one.
art director, yes. And so that's how
Yeah.
I met Adam. And so we kind of, hung out on that set, and we got on, and we realized that we had a lot in common as far as this world. And so when I set out to make the short film, I came to Adam because I knew that he did art direction and I needed art direction for my short film. So I came to him and he stepped on and helped with that. And so, fast forward a couple of years, and we've both, Adam and myself, done a few other things, and now I'm ready to make the feature film.
And you
And of course
starred
I
in my
called it.
short film.
That's right,
You
I
starred in my
did.
short film, Troubleshooting. Yeah, he was one of the main characters.
hmm and so yeah, so Adam and I kind of kept in touch and helped each other out over the years. And so when I set out to move on production on the feature version of Who Dunt Dunt Done It, yeah, it felt like the right call to just call him in and get his help working on this too. And so I wrote and directed it, and then Adam was my assistant director.
I also want to
That
say,
is
like, I was always really impressed with Tom. Like, I've always been doing my own projects, and he's always been doing his own projects, and he's just always pushing forward and pushing the envelope and very ambitious with what he does. And I've always really had a lot of respect and appreciation for him in that. I really liked one great example that everyone should go watch is The Saber. He can tell you more about that, but I know that's not exactly the focus on this conversation, but it was a Star Wars film, and it's awesome.
Yeah, The Saber was it was a Star Wars fan film, which uh, same kind of thing where I wanted to take the world that is that world, essentially in this case Star Wars, and bring it into the world that we're all familiar with. So with that, it was just a 20-minute short film, but with that project, what I did is I took Star Wars, which takes place in another galaxy very far away, in essentially in the past, right? A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And I moved it so that it takes place in that same world, but fast forward through time and then move here. And now we are in the future of that world and we are here on Earth. And so, like, the Jedi are uh, or the Jedi are extinct. Use of the Force is outlawed. The Empire won and as reached out past their universe and is now here trying to conquer Earth, and that's where that short film goes. So I'm taking the same thing where I'm taking that genre and I'm bringing it into our world there. So that was yeah, that is up on my YouTube channel now, actually. So yeah, thanks for that, Adam. That was really sweet.
Oh,
No,
that's
it's true
cool.
though. I mean, it's very awesome. They did a great job with it. with
That's
all of
cool.
Tom's projects,
Huh.
though.
Oh, thank you.
So that makes sense that you like doing that kind of, I don't even know if it's like gender flopping or whatever kind of
Genre
yeah,
bending.
genre
Genre
bend
switch. There
well,
you go.
what is that? Yeah, genre switching, yeah. It's funny too because I was actually saying to, Tom, not, uh, Tom the director, but Tom, my
Hmm.
co-host,
Hmm.
off, podcast, I was like, "Yeah, this reminds me a lot of, like, Clue or Airplane." It's kinda got that, like, you know, you know what I'm saying? That kind of not even tongue in cheek, but very,
Hmm.
like, just kind of over the top humor, and I was like, "Huh, I
Yes.
wondered what the inspiration was." So that's interesting you say Clue.
Oh, very much. I'm so
No.
happy that you picked up on that and that it went there, because very much the comedic inspiration is the from the comedies that I grew up on, which is all the great comedies from the 80s and the early 90s,
Mm.
which I kind of always felt have a very different comedic tone to the more modern comedies that we're getting recently.
Yes.
It's a very different style of comedy, and
Yes.
those are the like Clue, Monty Python, Spaceballs, Wayne's World. Those are the kinds of comedies that I grew up on and that I love. So I tried to make Who Dun 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 It a similar kind of comedy that I would enjoy watching.
That's awesome. So now here's a discussion for both of you, because one thing we noticed is that, like, because it is so tongue in cheek and you're kind of skirting breaking the fourth wall, you're like, "Here's the fourth wall, let me nudge it."
Mhm.
The characters are even reacting to the music. It's like the music is its own character. So how did
Yeah.
you guys work together on that part? Because usually people don't they usually compose after the film is done, but since they're reacting to the
Mhm.
music, how did that work together for you guys?
So the characters in Who Dun 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 It are very much aware that they are characters in a movie, and that's kind of the whole underlying thing that keeps the movie together. In that we've all seen the Who Done It story. It's it's been done, and you've seen one, you've seen them all. So if you're going to do one, how are you going to do one differently to keep people interested? And the way we did that is exactly this. It's self-aware, it's meta. They know they're making a movie. In fact, one of the characters in the movie is the director of the movie. And when we did the short film, I actually played myself as the director in the movie while I was directing it. And so to answer the question, we knew coming in that it was going to be, it's like, because the movie is called Who Dun 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 It. So we knew coming in they were going to play off of that kind of dramatic accent. And so as I wrote the script, I knew where the accents were going to fall, and we knew what the accents were going to be. And so all of the actors knew, okay, when you say this, we're going to hear dun dun dun. And so just react like you're hearing it. And then so they would play out the scene, they'd get to that point, and then they would pause as if they were giving room for the music to play. And then they would kind of just look around the room as if there was music playing and they couldn't find where it was coming from. And then we just put it in post and, edit so that it works. And because it helps knowing coming into it that that's what you're going to do, so you can, adequately prepare.
There's one point at which one actor comes into the scene and he's like, "Did I miss the music?"
Yes. Yes.
"Oh, I missed the music. Oh no!" Like it was a big thing for him.
Yeah, that character gets very excited by the things that are happening, and so he's the one that enjoys when the accent happens, and so when he's out of the room when it happens and comes in, yeah, that was a fun moment for me.
It gets kind of confusing because it gets a little almost Inception-esque. You're in a murder mystery dinner that, of course, becomes a murder, but then there's like another layer of a murder on top of a murder, and then you start talking about we're in a movie and we're not just filming a movie, we're in a movie, and things like that. How did you keep it all straight?
So in my head, it was very much a matter of I'm gonna worry less about keeping it straight and just provide an entertaining journey. You know, at the very end, one of the characters says, "The journey is more important than the destination," and to me, that kind of sums up the whole movie. Like, let's just go on the ride that the movie takes us on, have the fun the movie is providing, and worry less about keeping it straight and plot. And yes, there's a plot and that's important and all that, but my focus is more on just having fun. And I feel like not enough movies lately allow for the audience to just have fun. And so that was kind of my, battle cry from the very beginning. Let's just make a fun movie, and let's just have a good time with what we're doing here. The world is in a state right now where there's a lot of world suck happening and not enough fun and not enough happy. So let's make a movie with a plot and all of that, but then let's just have fun with
Based on what Tom just said, also, like, there was a lot, from an assistant directing perspective, there was a lot of characters that we were following and needing to know where they go and where they're sitting and all this stuff. Like, and Tom, being a writer and director, was so valuable. Because it's his story, it's his vision, but because he had also written it, he really knew the fine nuances of every little scene, every little thing a character would say. And sometimes I would see something and like suggest something like, "We got to use this. This is so good." And he'd be like, "No, that can't fit because of this." And I'd be like, "Ah, damn, he's right." Um, that happened a lot. But another thing too that was interesting was, being an outsider reading his script for the first time, was because there's so many characters. Because, and as Tom told me, well, when you have a lot, you have to have a lot of characters, because when they start dying, there have to be people left that are suspects, and that's a truth of the genre.
it.
And I found that, like,
Yeah.
that was very eye opening, because I had never written a murder mystery, so.
Yeah, there
That
are
actually
there
is
are
interesting because I was going to say, one thing I was wondering about is the production, because there are a lot of characters and it's in a relatively confined space. And I'm guessing you were filming at some point during, you said like maybe a year into the pandemic, you
Mhm.
produced it. Did you kind of put everybody in a bubble and film it like over a weekend, or how did you do that? Because you have so many characters and so many scenes, you have to constantly be juggling who's in what scene. It'd be hard to
Mhm.
do that if you were kind of piecemealing it.
Oh yeah, for sure. So what we did is we were actually ready to move on production basically when the pandemic first hit. And we ended up pushing it back to we were going to go summer 2020. But as we all know, like what was going to be 2 weeks turned into 2 months, then 6, 8, whatever. And so we were kind of ready to go as soon as the pandemic will let us go. And then we ended up having to push it off for over a year. And so while we were ready to roll summer 2020, we ended up not being able to actually start rolling until fall 21. And by that point, the pandemic was still on, but it was kind of at the tail end where we could get up and go and do things as long as we had negative tests and we had the masks and all that. So what we did is we kind of filmed sparingly, 2 or 3 days a week over the course of 2.5 months. And every time we came to set again for another batch of shoot days, we everybody had to take a test and provide us with proof of a negative test. And if someone either didn't have a test or had a positive test, which thankfully never happened, but if that did end up happening, then we would, have to adjust and not bring them to set, because everyone, safety is obviously the most important thing. And making this movie, while it's something we all want to do, was never worth anybody's health. And so if there was ever a point where somebody had not taken a test or tested positive, then we would have postponed. Thankfully, that didn't end up happening, and we were able to come to set and film. We just had everyone who was not on camera was wearing a COVID mask the whole time, and we were trying to keep social distance as much as possible, unless the actors were on camera at the same time and in the scene, which happens throughout the movie. But unless the camera was on you, then we're wearing a mask and we're separating and we're you know following the COVID protocols as best we can. Like our food was in prepackaged separate things. Like we had one of the actors is also in the medical field, and so they signed on to be our COVID compliance officer to kind of help to make sure that everything we did was in uh, was up to par with COVID compliance standards, and so he was able to help us make sure that everybody was completely safe the whole time.
One other thing that I remember, I wasn't part of the process during this, but Tom, you had to recast some roles between your original cast and when we
Hmm.
went forward with the feature a year later.
Yeah, well, that that when we first did it back in 2016, the short film, yeah, a lot of the cast from that had moved on, so we cast the feature and we're ready to go in 2020. But then, as we had to push it back over a year because of COVID. By the time we were actually able to start, yeah, it had been a year, so with zero movement. So it makes sense that there were some actors who had moved on and were no longer available. And so we did, I don't remember off the top of my head which characters, but there were some characters we had to recast real quick. Yeah, and then we brought on some lovely people and very talented casting. I could not have asked for a better cast and crew. I feel like the reason that this film works is because we have such a great cast who all just dove into their roles. And as you said earlier, yeah, there are a lot of them. There are 16 characters that we're following. But part of the reason for that is, like you said, uh, half of them die. And when half of them die, there still has to be enough survivors that we still don't know who the killer is. Like if there were six and four of them die, well, we know that one of the last two is the killer, right? So process of elimination. And that was one of the things I noticed about Clue. All even before I set out to write this, is that Clue has 6 or 8 characters, but everyone who dies, there a lot of people die, but they're all side characters that show up for one scene and then die. Versus in Who Done It, what I wanted to do was have characters who we're getting to know. They are main characters that we're following, and then they so they don't just show up for one scene and then die. Like they're there the whole time until they die. So what's funny is because there were so many characters, I set up early on, because the first probably 15-20 minutes of the film we are in the dining room. And so I set up early on a seating chart as to who's going to sit where at that table. And as I progress, even now, even up till today, whenever I have to recall the characters and the actors, even if I like make a post on social media and I want to tag people, I'll just recall the seating chart in my mind, start on one end of the table and just work my way around the table because I could remember
I
who's
still have
sitting
it
where at the
memorized.
table. Yeah, me too.
One question I have for Tom about writing, and I hope you guys don't mind me asking him really quick.
Oh,
Hmm.
go for it.
But um, writing yourself into a script is a really unique thing. I have, tried to write stand up on my own, and I feel like I can come up with jokes, but I just don't find myself interesting enough, even though I know I'm doing lots of stuff all the time. So
Hmm.
hopefully someone would. But like, how do you wrap your mind around writing a version of you for the film? Like that's
Mm.
to me really interesting.
So what I kind of did with that is I kind of just played with, because the whole film plays on genre stereotypes. And so kind of what I did was, instead of writing this character as me, I instead I kind of just wrote a generic stereotypical director that is the kind of stereotypical director that you would think about. If someone were to mention to you, classic Hollywood director stereotype, the image that you get in your mind, that's kind of what I wanted the character to be. And then I just called them Thomas Tulak and said they were directing this film, and then let them play with the idea that they're there trying to make this film and their character in the film, and everything is going off script and falling apart and not going to plan. And now you got to be that nervous, stereotypical director that's just trying to keep everything together as it's falling apart. But because like there is a very specific cliche director that pops into your head when you say that. And in my head, it was I picture, he's got what do you call, that kind of has like a golf hat, and he's got like tan pants, maybe a scarf, and maybe a riding, like horse riding boots that, and the puffy pants that are puffed on like above the knee kind of thing, and an ascot maybe, and he's carrying one of those what do you call it, the bullhorn things he can talk through. And there's a very typical, and I tried to pull back from the like over the top comedic, but play into that stereotype as much. So I kind of just did that rather than making it specific to me, because if I had done that, it would have been a very different character. It would have been, t-shirt and jeans and, everything's chill rather
Sure.
than over the
You
top
have some
crazy.
really great characters, actually. I love the names of the characters. You have two characters, Bonnie and Kevin Generic,
Hmm.
and then and then I like Mr. Randy Dumb, Mr. Random.
Yes.
That was funny. And there's a whole, you really played that joke along. That was a great,
Hmm.
you got your money's worth out of that one,
Oh, thank
Mr.
you so
Random.
much. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, when the scene
Was
when
that just a fun part?
oh yeah, coming up with the names was great. In fact, really, when I went to name the character Random, I I had already named a bunch of the other characters. I already named the generic headmaster, the generic little boy, and Darren Tugas and all of the other characters. And then I needed a name for this one character, and I was just like, I don't know, I'll just name him something random. That's it. It was very much like that. And then I'm so glad that I did that too, because I think one of my favorite sequences in the film is when they discover Rand's dead body, and they have that whole like uh how'd you kill Rand, who's that whole Rand see Rand run kind of sequence that just keeps going. And it makes me smile every time I even think about it. That whole thing, this is one of my favorite scenes. Get my mileage out of that name as much as I can.
Yeah. So what's your plan for the film? It's in the festival circuit now. I think it's probably gonna do
Hmm.
great there. It's definitely a movie for movie fans. People who love movies will love the jokes in it and stuff. It's really funny. It's very meta. So what's your goal for the film, and then what else are you working on going forward?
Well, I feel definitely that this film is best enjoyed with an audience, with a group of people. This is not the kind of film whose first viewing should be at home alone on your couch. This is the kind of film that even if you're not going to see it with 200 people in a theater, at least see it with a group of friends together, hanging out, having a good time. Like this is a group kind of film for sure. And then on your second viewing, go back and watch it that at home, because when you're by yourself, you're going to catch a lot of things you didn't catch the first time around. That being said,
This isn't a film you're gonna laugh at. The jokes are funny, but you're laughing at the film too. I mean, it's the impolite laughing, but it's funny that you're doing that.
yes, yes, and I love that, and I love even when you're laughing at the film instead of with the film. That's my favorite thing. Like trying to get that laugh. I'm very aware that the laugh is coming, and where and how and why and all that. But to answer your question, so it is going to premiere at Kevin Smith's Smodcastle Film Festival in December. And we
Ooh.
are waiting to hear back from a number of other film festivals. I don't want to say which ones just yet because I haven't heard back from them just yet. But I'm going to attend Kevin Smith's festival, and I'm going to be trying to acquire distribution through that festival. And then if I'm unable to do it at that festival, then I'm going to be trying to procure distribution through other means. I'm going to be reaching out to a couple of other distribution companies who I've had a little bit of contact with. The ultimate goal here being, of course, distribution. And then if I am still unable to acquire distribution after bringing, my plan is to bring some value to the film through the festivals. And so eventually I'll end up taking it to American Film Market, AFM, if I haven't done, like, that's kind of my third step if I haven't got it to where I need to be yet. So, there is some festivals coming, and then ultimately working toward distribution. I do have some contact with some distribution companies. I don't want to say which ones or who or what just yet, but for sure, for
What I
sure.
what I would add is if anyone is listening and you work for a distributor and you would like to watch our film, reach out to Thomas. He will hook you up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thomastulak.com is your website, right?
Yeah, that is thomastulak.com is my personal website that, yeah, that one's kind of just used for business. So if I'm trying to connect with other filmmakers and work on things together, or promote my, because I also do freelance work, and so if I'm trying to promote my freelance work, then I'll send people to thomastulak.com. But aside from that, if you just kind of want to see like the work that myself and my team have done, we have easilyamusedgroup.com, which we kind of look at as sort of our production company site, are basically our little Netflix, like for myself and my team. There's quite a bit of stuff on there that we had put up, and it's kind of like our little streaming thing. So those are the two websites that I'm kind of pushing. And if you go to easilyamusedgroup.com, you're going to land on a page that's specifically dedicated to Who Dunt Dunt Dunnit, and it'll have the trailer, the posters. It'll have a little 8-minute preview scenes taken right out of the film, and basically all the information where you can follow the film is right there.
Great. Well, good luck with the film. I enjoyed. I am lucky because I got to see the screener. So
Oh,
It
good.
was a lot of fun.
Oh,
yeah.
good. I'm glad. I'm
But
glad.
yeah, look for them in festivals, and then hopefully we'll see you online on some streamer at some point. And Adam, where can people find you if they want to find you?
I'm Instagram at Adam Pineless. Also adampineless.com has a lot of my score reel and some audio engineering work I've done, some various other projects. Yeah, thank you guys.
All those links and stuff will be in the show notes, so people can find the trailer and find the websites too.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. I was just gonna put my Instagram handle out there too, is at TNTULAK. TN Tulak.
All right. Got it. Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll see everybody next time.